Our next guest is State Senator David Knezek. He is the newest member of the Senate. He is a Democrat from Dearborn Heights. He's also a United States Marine. I'd say retired, but people tell me once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine, an Iraq War veteran, so we'll just stay with U.S. Marine if that's okay with everybody. Senator, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Well, glad to have you. And I'm just going to call you Senator if that's okay. We'll just go that way.
You can just call me David. You just call me David.
All right, David, how about that? We'll do that. Okay, you gave the Democratic response last night to the governor's address. Okay, first of all, what about the governor's address? Let's end gridlock here, the 5 principles to move forward. Let's streamline some government, consolidate a couple of agencies. Your reaction to what he had to say first?
Well, I think that my reaction is very similar to a number of other Democrats I spoke to last night, and that is we thought it was a pretty good speech. And the issues that the governor laid out and the things that he wants to address in the year and the years moving forward, I think is a tremendous thing. Obviously, the concern is that we want to make sure that the governor is genuine, that he's sincere in his approach. And if that's the case, I think that he can count on having a significant amount of bipartisan support in trying to address the initiatives that he laid out last night.
You know, I kind of thought you would agree with that because, I listened to the speech and I thought, if I had my eyes closed, I think I was listening to a progressive Democrat governor and not a Republican, and I'm being serious.
I was looking out at some members of the Republican Party last night and not seeing a significant amount of clapping. So I think there were some members who might agree with you on that one.
Well, maybe a lot of folks, and maybe Rick Snyder's planning to join your team over there. In part of your response, you talked about the student at Saginaw Valley who works 2 jobs, crippled with student loan, counting on us. Single mom from Marquette with a sick daughter, trying to figure out whether to stay home and take care of her kid or go to work, counting on us. Factory workers in Muskegon, counting on us. What about the people like you and I that go to work every day, that are working hard to send our kids to college, and that are counting on the state legislature to keep their hands off my pocketbook so that I can afford to do the things I need to do? What about, aren't they counting on you too?
Yeah, well, there's no question, Steve. I think what we try to call attention to in my response last night is not unlike what the governor tried to call attention to, and that is to humanize what it is Michigan families are going through right now. Whether it's, again, the folks that I talked about in my speech or the folks that you just mentioned in your comments there, we want to make sure that if you're a working person, that we want to be doing everything that we can to, again, streamline government when appropriate, get out of the way, and to let our residents do what they do best, and that's kick butt and try and make Michigan into the economic powerhouse that we know that it can be. We're not always going to agree on the way to get there, but what I tried to highlight in my response last night was the fact that when we put aside those Democrat and Republican names that come at the end of our titles, when we put those aside, we're able to get back to the business of working together to try and find a common path to our goals. That's something that I'm committed to moving forward in the next few years. I know that that's what the members of the Democratic Party are committed to, and we hope to work with the governor on a number of the initiatives that he laid out last night.
Here's my concern, one of many. Mm-hmm. We're on the phone this morning with State Senator David Knezek of Dearborn Heights, a Democrat, new member of the body. As I look out across the state of Michigan, I see a plan that's been put forward by the governor and Democrats to ask us to raise our sales tax. And I look out there at a state that has over $145 billion in debt, real tangible debt. Nobody ever talks about that, David. Well, who's going to pay the debt for the state of Michigan, or are we all going to end up being Detroit?
No, I tell you what, Steve, I think first and foremost it's important to note that the plan that was passed was a bipartisan plan. Democrat and Republicans came together to put that initiative before the folks here in the state of Michigan. And I think it's a good thing that we're trying to bring the residents into this conversation and to give them the opportunity to have their voices heard as to whether or not they want to have this additional option to pay for the roads here in the state of Michigan as well. As it relates to the budget conversations on the whole, Steve, I'll tell you this. We have, within the Michigan Constitution, a balanced budget amendment. We have to have a balanced budget every year. The question is, what are we going to prioritize in order to get there? And obviously, we've had some disagreements over the last few years about issues related to taxation that you've just mentioned, paying down our debts, being able to take care of the legacy costs that we have for state workers and our other employees. What we want to make sure is that at the end of the day, we're doing everything that we can to put more money into people's pockets. I believe that that is what drives the economy. When people like you and the other people you talked about earlier who are going out, they're working hard, they're trying to put their kids through college, when they have more discretionary income They're going out, they're investing in our economy, they're creating jobs, they're expanding the economic activity here in our state. And I think that, to be forthright with you, that's something that Democrats don't talk about enough. And that's what we need to be doing to support our residents and supporting our business community so that we can continue to grow and attract new businesses here to our state. The debt certainly is a part of the problem, but it is a piece of a much larger conversation that I don't think that we're having here in the state of Michigan right now.
And David, I agree with you. The problem is I don't think we have that piece of the conversation ever. I hear about, in fact, part of this plan that's going in front of voters on May the 5th, if I'm not mistaken, is retiring some old debt from the Engler administration. I'm not even sure, nothing personal, David, I'm not sure you were quite born when that debt was accrued. You're kind of a young fella, aren't you? You're a young man.
Yeah.
And you look at this. We're retiring debt from when you were probably still in diapers. That's a little embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, there's no question. I think it's also funny, the governor's movements to merge Department of Community Health and Department of Human Services, that's undoing a change that took place under the Engler administration as well. And believe me, Steve, I get it. For me, as the youngest member of the Senate, it's incredibly frustrating when I'm seeing the state going up against challenges that folks who came far before me were unwilling to address. That is exactly the problem that we're facing with the road situation that we're talking about right now. Folks could have taken care of this issue decades ago if they would have passed the right and comprehensive type of tax reforms to make sure that we were paying for the infrastructure that our residents deserve. They didn't do it. And so, I give the legislature, I give the governor credit for trying to take on this issue. I understand and respect the fact that there's going to be differencing of opinions and the dialogue that needs to happen. But again, I look at what we're going to get at the end of the day. $1.3 billion additional dollars for our roads, guaranteed. My biggest problem, and I think you have a problem with it too, is when we tell folks in this state, we're going to tax you for this and we're going to pay for that, but then
it never works that way.
And they take the money out and they start spending it on whatever else. That's not right. We're going to get $1.3 billion for roads. We're going to get $300 million additional dollars for schools. We're going to get $94 million additional dollars for our local governments. So again, we can have agreements or disagreements on whether or not it was the best plan. I'll go out there and say that I wish the legislature would have taken care of it ourselves. It might have been a very difficult conversation to have, but the residents did not elect us to keep kicking the can down the road. They elected us to make the tough decisions, and I was willing to make the tough decisions there in the legislature. But the plan that was presented to us, the plan that was developed by leaders from the Democratic and Republican caucuses in the House and the Senate, as well as the governor's office, was the option to put the sales tax increase on the ballot here in May. And like the governor said in his speech last night, I certainly hope that folks do their homework, they do their due diligence, and that they go out and they vote yes, so that we can make sure that we take care of the crumbling roads here in Michigan.
And I guess we'll see what happens going forward. David Knezek, state senator, a Democrat from Dearborn Heights, and a retired U.S. Marine. Hey, thank you for your service, number one, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Now, you tell your friends there in the Democratic caucuses and parties that you go to that, Gruber's a cream puff. Come on anytime, and he'll let them slide. All right. Senator, I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.